I'll show you a couple other simple chord variations here that are used by Sonny Boy Williamson's guitar players, and then we'll move on to a couple unusual chords, more complicated things, really unique licks. One variation I'm going to show you here is with the 7th chord with a major chord. So if we're playing in the key of G, there's a tune called Don't Start Me Talking where you hear something like this. And he's playing that as a fill over the 1 chord. So if I'm in the key of G, my bar chord, if I'm playing a first position major chord, G major chord, I've got my first finger barring the 3rd fret, 1st and 2nd strings, my 2nd finger on the 4th fret of the 3rd string, and then my ring finger comes down on the 5th fret of the 5th string, which is my root, but I don't really need that. I just need the top 3 strings. And what I'm doing is just going all the way up here to the 15th fret, and that is over the G. So that's a G chord. It's a kind of a cool fill. So if you listen to a tune called Don't Start Me Talking, there's a point in the song where he's playing over the 1 like that. And so you can do that in F, you can do it in D, do it in C, and later when we get into the double stops you'll see him use this as part of a turnaround. So that's a chord shape that you can use a lot. Another one, which actually I got to go back and show you another version of a 7th chord, is something you hear like this. And another way to use this chord, now if we're playing out of a, let's use the capo, let's play in the key of G, and the B7 shape. And in a lot of Sonny Boy tunes, when he gets to the 5, you'll hear this. Something like that, but you hear this as he gets to the 5 chord. And all it is a B7th chord, like this, and with the capo on there. Now if you don't want to use a capo, if you're going to play that, let's say we're playing in the key of G, you got to play it like this, which is what I call Magic Sam. 7th chord. I've got my 1st finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. I've got my 2nd finger on the 4th fret of the 4th string. I've got my ring finger on the 5th fret of the 3rd string and my pinky on the 5th fret of the 1st string. So we could do something like this. If we don't play with the capo. But I think most of the Sonny Boy tunes, he does have the capo on there, and he's playing the B7. B7 shape. That's just another variation of a chord. You hear that in a lot of Sonny Boy tunes when he gets to the 5. And whether it's the 1st guitar player, 2nd guitar player, it's hard to tell who's playing what. So if you're playing a shuffle, let's just do like a Love in Vain shuffle in G, and I'll show you where this comes in. So that 7th chord on the 5, you hear that a lot. I call that playing the 7th over the 5. I'm not sure what the musical terminology for that is, but you get the idea. Okay, some different chords. One of my favorite Sonny Boy things that I hear is his use of an add 9th chord. And he does this in several different tunes when he's playing over the 4 chord. Let's play in the key of C, and he's got a tune called Unseen Eye, and I'm pretty sure that's the one in the key of C, or maybe it's Cross My Heart, Cross Your Heart, and he's playing in C, so he starts out like this. goes to the 4, here's the thing I'm talking about. And that is just a really neat chord to play over the 4. So instead of playing the 9th, the F9th, he's playing this, which is a really jazzy chord. And all you do, it's a very simple chord to play. You use your first position major chord, bar chord. Just like we did before, we did it on the G. Let's just move it down to the F. So my first finger is barring the 1st and 2nd strings at the 1st fret. Make your chord and then take your pinky and drop it in on the 3rd fret of the 1st string. And he walks into it. Into it, if you're playing up here or down here in F, you're going to hit an open 3rd string and then use your 2nd finger and go from the 1st fret to the 2nd fret. The reason I suggest the 2nd finger is because then you're right there in your chord shape. All you do is put your fingers down and you're right in your F add 9th chord. C. Now another place where I hear him playing that add 9th chord is when he's playing in the key of G. So if you're playing in the key of G, when you go to the 4 chord, you're playing the C add 9th. Back to the 1. So what I'm doing here, I've got a first position C bar chord. And I'm dropping the pinky on the 10th fret of the 1st string. And to lead into it, I don't have the open string to play this time. So I've got to take my 2nd finger to the 7th fret of the 3rd string, go 7th, 8th, 9th, and chord. Like that. Here's my 1. I'm playing that 2nd position 9th chord over the 1. Chord progression is, but that add 9th chord just adds a really unique sound. And Sonny Williamson's guitar players are really the only guys that I can say I've heard use it quite like that, and that's what makes them unique. So in G, when we go to the 4, we can just let it ring. Strum it or do all kinds of things with it. One last kind of cool chord trick that I hear in the Sonny Williamson tunes is found on a tune called Cross Your Heart. And he does this. This is the only song I can recall him doing this, or if it's Robert Jr. Lockwood, or Luther Tucker, whoever's playing this. It's on a tune called Cross Your Heart. And he's playing in C. And he uses a chord that sounds like this. I call that the Hideaway chord, or the Earl Hooker chord. And if you hear the tune Hideaway in the key of E, you hear Freddie King play a stop time where he does this. And it's a 7th chord. So here's a C7. And that's where you hear it in the song Cross Your Heart by Sonny Williamson. Got my 1st finger on the 5th fret, barring the 1st and 2nd strings. I gotta make the chord. My 2nd finger is on the 7th fret of the 3rd string. My ring finger is on the 8th fret of the 4th string, and my pinky is on the 8th fret of the 1st string. And that's the chord. That's sort of how he plays it. He strums it. Let me show it to you in context so you get an idea of how it's used. So he's in a slow tune, Cross Your Heart, in the key of C. And at the beginning of a verse, he starts out something like this. he's doing he's going all the way up here to the 15th fret, 2nd position, 9th chord, and then back to the 9th before he goes into the 4. So that's kind of a transition between the 1 and the 4 that's really cool. So again, if you're playing a slow tune in C, listen to the tune, cross your heart, and that's where you hear that lick. Now one last idea that I'm going to leave you with, which is something I should have shown you earlier when I was teaching you the 1st position 9th chord, is another neat little chord trick that he uses with the 1st position 9th chord when he's going from the 4 back to the 1 in a tune. And I'm trying to remember the name of the song. I think Sad to Be Alone is the tune that I'm thinking about. Or it could be, oh, Keep It to Yourself. It's one of the, I think it's Sad to Be Alone. But he does something like this. He goes to the F. So he's playing this. Remember that? So when he goes to the 4, I'm going to play it up here just so you know the place in the song. It's really played up here with the capo on the 1st fret. If you watched the 1st lesson, you saw this. So the rhythm part. So what he's doing is when he's going from the 4, so while the rhythm guitar is playing that, behind him, Lockwood playing the 9th chords. So he's on the 4, he's starting with an F 9th, which is your 4 chord. And he's just doing this chord run back up to the 1, the C 9th. And in the song, he's playing that right about there. And then the rhythm guitar is... And that is a typical Chicago blues type thing. Okay, one last little chord trick that I'm going to show you. This is something you only hear really on one tune that I can hear. And this is something that I think Robert Luna Jr. Lockwood's doing on a tune called Sad to Be Alone. He's playing in the key of C, and the 2nd guitar is playing the rhythm. And he goes to F. Now you got a capo when you're doing this. Let me put the capo on there, because the rhythm guitar is playing this part. We learned this in the 1st lesson. When he gets to there, right there, right before he goes back to the 1, you hear him, Lockwood, play this little 9th chord thing. To the 1, right when he gets back to the 1. So let me play it. I can't play 2 guitars at once, but here's the rhythm guitar. So he's using the 1st position 9th chord. He starts at the F, but this time on the 12th fret with the capo. And he's just taking it back to the 1. 1 fret at a time, moving down. To the 1. There's your C 9th. The C is the 1 chord. Now the C, the rhythm guitar, is back to this. If you listen to Sad to Be Alone, there's only one verse where he does this, and I just caught this listening with headphones on. Wow, that's a cool fill with the 9th chord. And that's another example of how you can use the 9th chord as a rhythm chord. Okay, so that is 9th chords, 7th chords, and a few other chord ideas in between. Again, take these chords and listen to the old Sonny Boy stuff, and you can figure out what he's doing if you want to figure exactly what the guitar players are doing. Or just take what I've shown you and play around with it, be creative, and put it together however you want to put it together. And again, depends on whether or not you're playing with a 2nd guitar player, or if you're the only guitar player and you got to mix the bass rhythms with the chords or something like this. But the ninth chords are something that the first guitar plays over the top of the bass rhythms. Now in the next lesson we're going to move into the double stops, which are really fun and very much characteristic of the guitar playing that you hear on the tunes by Little Walter and Sonny Boy Williamson, who's the focus of this lesson.